Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. Today we're going to talk about state management and a real practical implementation of that in HAXcms. So here's the state management question, if you will. So if I open up, say DMD 100 in this case, and I'm clicking around through things, and state management holistically is the fact that when I select one of these, every other part of the interface knows where we are. We know what the route is, which is the name of the URL, and then if I reload, everything is kept in state. You see, I do have a little state management issue there where that has to open, right? Has to open the menu back up to where it was. So that's state management. The state management trick that I'm going to be implementing from a UX perspective is, it's kind of cool in this theme specifically. When I hit edit, you'll see that the buttons get locked, so I can't actually go click away from them. But then also this panel kind of fades away, right? So visually, the only thing that is in the focal point of my vision is the content itself. So maybe I would center that, and I don't care about these things, and I hit save, and then it comes back in. It fades back in, content gets updated, all that fun stuff. So that only happens in that theme. Where I was running into this and going, this is kind of annoying, is in writing these posts for my blog. So see, this is the HAXcms theme. So as I scroll down, it's fine, but you see there's this big like, hey, subscribe to BTO Pro on RSS. If I hit edit, it's actually in the way, right? So this is less of a big deal. It might be nice to fade that out. The header, there is a floating header on this, and if I do that, right, you can see it. If I'm editing, it's actually the same height as this bar, so then that's not getting in the way of anything. So I want to get this out of the way. I want to kind of fade these. I also don't want you to be able to click on them or whatever to jump you away from the UX, the thing you're actually trying to do, right, which is just edit this material. Okay, so that's the problem space. So the way that I go about working on specific themes like that and solving problems like that in context is, so I'm in HAXcms, I fired up DDEV to start this. That's how you see that page there. So then I go into sites, and in this case it's going to be BTO Pro, and I run a Polymer serve with an entry point of dist/dev.html. Now, I know to do that just because I've been doing work in Polymer, and it's in some of our documentation around how to do this. So now what this has done is it's fired up this site, and it looks like it's the same site, but I'm not logged in. This is just kind of like a pure static, it's just a mini web server, if you will. So I'm going to take this off the URL, which is, unfortunately, it's also in the docs to do that. If I take that piece off of the URL, this is now going to build everything off of node modules dynamically. So it's going to be real kind of clunky as it loads in, especially the first time. And I'm going to refresh. You'll see it's churning, and that's because the polyserve, which is what Polymer serve does, is processing node modules in real time. Now if I do subsequent ones, it'll start to get faster. But HAXcms is a really big project. So it has to resolve what all the different dependencies are, and then it builds a cache internally of those. You'll see there's actually this, hey, code de-optimized stylings of 500K. So sometimes with Polymer serve, and if you have other resources being used on your system, it might take a little while to process the full tree. But now it's real fast, right? So it's kind of you suffer through that the first time. All right, so now I've got a working environment that I can manipulate this and see what the changes are. So I'm going to open up a new window, and I know that this is the HAXcms theme. And then, so this is the context. I'm working on an element, right? So an element in LR and Web Components. To work on any of those elements, I can do yarn start, but what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do open space period so that you can see, right? So I'm in this mono repo, all of my elements are here, and then to do theming in HAXcms, you actually just make an element that implements different classes the right way. So we've got that up now, and then I'm going to do yarn start. And what yarn start is doing in this context is, it's going to open up a little docs page, but I don't actually care about that. It is going to run a watch. You see it says watch. And all the changes that are to files in this src directory, it'll rebuild them and put it in this file location. Which then, when I refresh this page, it will load and you'll see the changes. So, to illustrate this, open up and look at what one of our themes looks like. So, this is the HAXcms theme. You'll see the way that we integrate a web component to become a theme in HAXcms is we have a superclass called HAXcms theme. How about that? In which we wrap it on whatever element type that you want. We kind of recommend you use Polymer for the themes. You don't absolutely have to, but it'll make life easier. And so then you see we get the colors, constructor that pulls in all our different elements here. We've got some, auto runs on the connected callback. So let's talk about that as far as state. So this is how we do state management in HAXcms. Is off of our store, but we're using mobx. So absolutely love mobx. Don't entirely understand how it works, but it's pretty brilliant with what it does and what it enables you to have access to. So basically, what we do is we have an auto run function, and then auto run is saying, mobx picks up the auto run and then basically looks at what's in here and sees, oh, there's a call to store.manifest. So anywhere else in the system, in any other element that manipulates store.manifest, mobx is going to know to run this function again. So imagine that you get kind of this two-way data binding effect where you're updating the store. You don't want to manipulate the store outside of very specific instances. But whenever someone does have the authority to manipulate the store, like we do it via events, then it's going to have to update these variables. These variables will then propagate into the theme, and then you'll see your changes. So I can look in the store. I believe I have it. Yeah, there it is. So I have the store here, and you see that we have something called editMode. In editMode, you'll see there's an auto run that says, oh, hey, whenever editMode changes, if we have a valid HAXcms or HAXstore, which is the editor, then dispatch an event globally that, hey, HAXcms editMode has changed. So we do some juggling between like event management as well as writing to, in this case, the HAXstore. So Hax, the editor, has a store that is not in mobx. HAXcms uses mobx. We might migrate Hax editor to use mobx in the future, but it becomes it's not a breaking change for people integrating it. It's a breaking change as far as compatibility, because technically the Hax editor will work in IE11 right now, and because of the version of mobx we're using, it requires ES6, and so it can't be compiled. We've gone back and forth about this, and just because of sustainability of doing things in the future, we don't really see a big need to do ES5 with HAXcms. I've talked about that in the past. You can find other videos for it. But so in mobx in 3 seconds, you write a decorators area and you say what's observable and what's computed. And so you'll see what's observable here is edit mode, location, manifest, and active ID. And so in our case, and this is a good data flow, state management type of thing, whenever something wants to change what's active, right? So whenever I click on this link, that active ID is actually, it's pegged to a unique identifier under the hood, but anyone that wants to tweak that state is just going to manipulate active ID, and then everything else is going to get figured out from there, right? So active manifest index, what the active item is, what the theme data there is, active item, hey, go and find this unique ID inside of this function, okay, find item, which looks off the manifest, is going to return a singular item when it's found. So stuff like that, right? So just making sure that no one is setting the item globally. People are always setting the ID, and then the ID is used to figure everything else out. So what we want to do today is we're trying to make that thing fade based on changing the edit mode. So the first thing I need to do is I need to actually tap into the edit mode here. So I'm going to do edit mode. And so this is a property that I'm putting on my element. In this case, the element is actually a theme. So I'm going to do edit mode, boolean, and then I'm going to do reflect to attribute true. Now, this is some Polymer, doc blocking convention, or Polymer decorator conventions, whatever you want to call them. It's just additional things on properties that that Polymer is going to pick up, and in this case, say like, hey, whenever manifest changes, let's figure out what the color is. You can see it's right there, and then return the color. So the manifest of the site actually dictates what this color variable is, as a simple example. Same with selected page, and we'll do the same thing with edit mode. So selected page, we can see, hey, notice that the location has changed, and when the location changes, let's change what the selected page is. That's how, whenever you click this, this is technically page 1, and this is page 0. These sitting in our HTML just look like this. So it's using, I believe it's iron pages, there it is. And iron pages is an element that basically just says, select whatever the highest level div is and make that visible and peg it to this variable. So if this is 0, then you're going to see the contents of this. If it's 1, you're going to see the contents of this. Easy as that. So we care about the content container wrapper in this case. And you can see there's subtitle, there's active title, or site active title. So site active title is this. And then subtitle would be if there's actually a subtitle, it's not something that's always implemented. And then there's a slot, which the slot is going to show the contents of whatever this is. Then you'll see we have a site query, which is something we'll discuss in other videos later, but basically it allows you to do querying of the site.json on the fly. So we have a site query. It says return everything, two-way data bind the results here into something called follow-up posts, limit 3, start the index at whatever the current is, which means this is the current item. Give me 3 items from here, and this is how you get the previous 3 posts that are shown here dynamically. So that if I click on technical weapons, I made a thing, web components, right? You see these keep trickling down. This allows kind of people to skip around through my work over the months or whatever. Those are using a simple blog card, and then if we go down, we see there's social float, hide on small, and then there's this thing called annoy user, because that's obviously what I would say it is. It's annoying you. Hey, never miss. So subscribe to my feed, whatever. Be bugged by me all the time. So what we want to do is we want that to fade away dynamically, right? We also want the social buttons to fade away and not be selectable. So the way we can do this is with data binding to that edit mode. So first I need to get edit mode to be activated based on the state of the system. So the easiest way to do that is we're going to copy this auto run function. And we're going to say this dot edit mode is pegged to store dot edit mode. And then this just allows for better data cleanup after the fact. Is basically pushing these into a big array, and then in the event that this element, that this theme is changed or removed from the DOM, then it just does cleanup and it gets rid of all these event listeners basically. So by putting edit mode in our properties block and then setting an auto run that says edit mode is 2JS store.edit mode, now whenever anyone changes or mutates the state of the system, the store associated with HAXcms, we're going to get edit mode changed. We're going to see that change here, and then this boolean is going to be set to whatever the global is. Reflect to attribute means that we can use that in styling then. So I'm going to go to Haxer-Slevin here. To do binding in classes, you have to do $$ equals in Polymer. And so I'm going to have, so this is social float, and then we're going to do social float, I believe it's edit mode. No, I see I want to peg it to another class. So let's put in here, let's do state class. And so do binded there. I'll show how we're going to do this in a second. State class on the annoy user, and then we're going to put hide small in that part. Okay, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add another variable called state class, and this is going to be type string. This is going to be a computed value, and we're going to run a function called get state class, and it's going to be computed based on edit mode. Okay, so then I'll do state class, edit mode. So what this is saying is, hey, whenever edit mode changes, then recalculate what this is going to be. So then I can do a real easy Boolean statement. If edit mode, then we'll return a string which will relate to our class name. So this will be, so if we're in edit mode, then disable items. Otherwise, we'll return nothing because we don't want to show anything. Okay, now we can get to our CSS. So if that makes sense, I have a state class property now that I can do data binding with. I go into haxer-11.html. Now I can do div class $this, which is saying, oh, hey, compute this dynamically. State class will change from nothing to something, and then, based on edit mode changing, we'll actually get the textual phrase disable -items there. Now I can peg this to CSS, so I can say dot disable items, and then I'm going to do cursor, or maybe it's pointer events. I can't remember. Pointer. There it is. Pointer events, none. And we're going to do opacity 0.2, so you can still see it, but like barely. And I think that's the only one we'll need to do for that. So then, what are these in? These are annoy user and social float. So let's find, okay, so social float, we'll say opacity is 1, and then we'll do a transition, 0.2s, all, and we'll do linear, sure. So that'll do a nice fade on anything. Well, actually, just do it on opacity. I don't care about the rest of it. So transition opacity linearly in this case. Oh, and I need that on annoy user as well. So I don't need these prefixes anymore because we don't support those. Yay. Okay. So now I've got it on annoy user, social floats. So let's see if this works. Go to our blog post, close, hit edit. Okay, it appears to have not done anything. Let's see if it's applying our classes. Get this up in another window here, sorry. And then scroll down, we got, so it is doing it right. So it is social float, hide small, disable items. And if I select disable items, here we go. So we can see that the opacity has been overridden, but pointer events is none, so I shouldn't be able to click on these. Hey, there we go. And I shouldn't be able to click on anything in here. Excellent. Okay, so let's cancel that, and now it should just be a basic, get rid of that window. Now it should just be a real basic priority setting. So in this case, you don't usually want to use important, but in this case I do, right? So important, we'll send that down to 0.2. Now what I could also do in this case is, so I've got social floats, right? So I kind of want those to be there, but let's do dot social floats dot disabled items. And then on annoy user, we will do dot annoy user, dot annoy user, dot disabled items. So it already will have selector priority. I don't need the import necessarily, but I do want this to be even, I probably want this to be 0, to be perfectly honest, on that bottom thing. So, okay, so I save that. So now what should happen is this should fade away, and the social buttons should fade, but you should still be able to see them. And voila. So now we've tied into the state, and now the user is no longer burdened by that panel at the bottom of the interface. I can make my edits and do whatever I want and hit save, and now it fades back in. Hey, you're being annoyed. So that's a nice little state management trick, if you will. Something else we can do with this is I can inspect this, and you see it says stand against the ocean, which is actually in site active title. And so site active title is the title of this blog post, but it's not editable, right? And it could be confusing potentially, because I call this up and it's like, well, why can't I modify that, right? So I have kind of a UX break in that if it's just left there. So what I can do, because of some of the neat ways that we've implemented state in HAXcms, let's close HAXcms. That has met those needs. We actually have UI elements that have the state baked into them. And so if you write site active title, you're automatically going to get the thing that's the active title, which title then is coming in dynamically. And so you can see that we're able to automatically generate the stateful aspect of this, right? Which is, hey, what's active right now? But semantically, someone can put in their theme site active title, and they don't have to think about state, right? So I think this is one of the killer features of what we're building with the HAXcms theme layer. And we really haven't even gotten into a ton of detail about how flexible it really is. But just from the early wins of theme development with the first like 6 or so themes we made, it's pretty game changing. So anyway, let's make that fade out in the same way, right? So that element, people don't even have to account for that in their theme. The element just knows, hey, we're editing. I'm not editable. Let's gray out slightly. So we're gonna do same type of thing. We'll do editMode, type boolean, reflect to attribute true, and this one is actually. I could go back into the HAXcms, and we didn't actually use the editMode reflect to attribute directly, but you may have noticed it does say host editMode. So like this is baked in here. If you don't define editMode, it does come across. So I'm kind of double adding it, if you will, because it's not actually reflected in the HAXcms. Like if I took this out, it would still work, and that's because it's actually coming in from the HAXcms theme. So if you're not familiar with superclasses, you can see here that I actually have all the wiring already for editMode, and so that's going to be inherited into into HAXcms and anything else for that matter. So I don't have to define it again. If anything, by defining it again, I'm going to lose the fact that it's doing this editMode, just minor resizing capabilities to ensure that the browser is the right height, or that things react to it being the right height. Anyway, that was a little detour there. Because this is just in this case, it's a Polymer element. We don't have those capabilities baked into it, and so. We've been asked before, why do you use Polymer, or when to use, lit element or what have you. So I could make this like a vanilla JS element. I probably will at some point. But the pieces we're getting from Polymer that are really useful, at least in my mind, is this computed aspect. You can do computed types of variables in lit element, for example, but in vanilla JavaScript I'd have to write a decent amount for that. Also, like this reflect to attribute, again, I could do that in vanilla. It's relatively minor, just getters and setters, but it's just how verbose do you want to be, and I don't really have to think in order to do this. So these are pretty readable, and we have Polymer Element in a lot of the platforms, so it starts to be, well, it's going to ship in there anyway. So it's kind of a staged collapse approach between these libraries. So we'll probably go from Polymer Element to Lit Element in this case. Why? Well, because we're data binding a title, and that really is pretty minimalist. So the computer and edit mode with reflect, like we can handle those other ways. Anyway, so we have the title. Now we're going to need to put in the disposer. You see, I did the disposer a little bit differently in this one, so we could refactor that now actually. So got this is the way generally that we do them in the newer elements that we're making. So I'm going to do this disposer equals array. Writing some PHP there for a second. So then you'll see the new, and this is kind of I was doing it one way for these disposers, and now we updated it. So then I'll put these ones in. We'll do active title. It's active title. And this is just a little bit cleaner integration with these. And again, it's for when they get pulled off the interface to make sure that these reactions go away. This is a state management type of a thing, right? You don't want event bindings and other stuff, updating properties, or caring about updating properties of things that aren't actually on the interface anymore. So we need to look at the disposers. There we go. Disconnected callback, and this will just clean up the state. This dot disposer equals. Let me see. Previously in the constructor, that superclass, we did that way. So in our active here, we'll do these. Generally speaking, that's the way it should be. It should be like, hey, disconnect everything, and then fire all of the super disconnected callbacks. Okay, so that should bring in edit mode, and so now edit mode will be pegged to the state of the whole tag. Cool. All right, and now I should be able to use this because it's reflected to the attribute, and so I can now do host and then edit mode. And so now imagine this is saying edit mode has been set on the whole tag. Well, in this case, the tag is just the title, so this is a real easy one. Opacity, we'll do 0.2. Then on the element itself, we'll do a transition, and we'll say 0.2s opacity linear. Okay, and then we'll say opacity 1 so that it has an easy transition point. Okay, now let's do it back to here. Hit edit, and that fades away. So we achieved the state, using state management correctly in order to achieve better user experience design as far as the authoring experience. And so that's kind of the way we can start to tie these things together and build a full-on application, even though ultimately it's all these little tiny bricks. So there's ways to do this beyond mobx. We've done, I mentioned we made a store with Hax, the editor piece, this piece that is not tied to mobx. The way that works is there's basically events, and anytime you want to edit something in the store, you call a write function, and the write function basically juggles the events on your behalf. Things have to say that they want to care about subscribing to events. It's a lot more verbose, to be perfectly honest, than what mobx boils everything down to, and it achieves almost the same thing. So, but you see, we get this nice little UX pattern here where, hey, I'm editing, that stuff moves out of the way, and I can just focus on editing the material, and then go back again. So then to get that stuff into production, right? So I've got these things sitting here, and I'll actually go into HAXcms, and I had mentioned that I didn't want to override edit mode, so we can take that out and know that edit mode is going to be picked up automatically. We could then look in the theme wire and see if edit mode is pegged to okay. So there's already a reaction in the connected callback or edit mode. So there's a good chance that we don't actually have to do that here. And then for consistency, I probably should set these on a constructor, because in the theme wiring, we push things onto there, right? So this is in the constructor. So I don't even need that actually in HAXcms for that to not come up as undefined, because it'll be available. It's a little weird, I know. And then I won't need this edit mode, because we already have edit mode on there. So this is how you can get nice abstractions given the way that superclasses work. Because I can do edit mode and say, okay, well, anything that implements this is just going to get edit mode. Similarly, it's going to get the router manifest, and the location is just going to get, for free, if you will. It doesn't. Everyone doesn't have to implement that. So if I look in here, we got site title, index, and there is location. But in this case, I'm running a like, hey, I need you to actually execute a function and tie into that, as opposed to here, when the location changes, it's just setting something that's underscore location, so that it can react to that. Which we see in this case, it's just setting, hey, make sure that we don't have an undefined, so that the store is always pointing to something. Basically, point to that the active item ID rather is always pointing to something. Let's rebuild that again, just to be safe. All right, so I took out the calls to automatically manage the state of edit mode, but they were in the superclass, and so we still see that happen, right? So that then ends the journey of state management here. So I'm done with that element. And then what I do from a process standpoint, okay, so I disable that. I go back to HAXcms here, and I run yarn run build. And yarn run build, which I won't include in this video because it takes a while to run, we'll go compile those assets, make them work in ES6 native modules, as well as ES6 with require.js AMD compiled modules, and then it'll work on the vast majority of platforms on the web. And then there's the fallback theme and stuff is already built into our build routine. So that means, based on this video, the next version of HAXcms it releases, which will be 0.9, it'll have this baked into this theme, this nice little state management aspect. So thanks for tuning in, and if you have any questions about HAXcms or state management, web components, any of that, hit me up on BTO Pro on Twitter, and keep up with the project on haxtheweb.org or elmsln.org.